This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. This is Michael. You can see we have a small group today. I mentioned it earlier to Nigel. I think quite some people are actually at the SC in Dallas, probably heading to the show. I hope everyone can hear me well. If not, just drop me a message in the chat and I'll see how I can fix it. Otherwise, I'll just get started. Let's see. Rolf asked me to chair this meeting. He's on his way actually to Dallas, so he's in the air. I couldn't attend myself the last call, so I've been catching up in the last days to see what you guys have been working on and been discussing in the last call. As far as I can see, a few documents have been prepared so far, and a few of them has been discussed in the last two calls at least. Last one being the IT gear specs. And oh, wait a second. I can see Richard is having audio problems. Second. I think it should be soon. All right. So I would like to start actually where you guys finished last time in the call. That's the IT gear specs documents. There were a few items being discussed actually throughout the whole document, and I noted some topics which should have added some extra information after the meeting. Perhaps we can have a look at those. There were a few topics which were still quite open for discussion. I think it would be also good to cover those. I have been informed there should be someone in the call today who could enlighten us on the red fish standardization. Am I correct?
Yeah. Hi, Michael. It's Steve Mills. Richard's on the call, but he's having some audio problems. So.
Okay.
Actually, it looks like Richard's audio is fixed. Richard, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Had to enter your audio pin.
Great. Welcome, Richard. Thank you for joining us. I would suggest we first start at the IT gear specs document to see if there are any open ends or discussion points we need to cover right now. I haven't seen much additional information actually, but let's go through it quickly to see if we need to cover something right now. Otherwise, I suggest we start with the document on the immersion management interface and ask Richard to enlighten us on the red fish application. And I think it would be good if we have some time still today to also cover a document which haven't been covered so far, which is the best practices document. There's still only a basic outline. Perhaps we can have a look at it together and see if we need to extend that outline and framework, and we can already add something, or which direction we need to take. Are you agreeing with this agenda for today?
Yeah, that works for me.
All right.
Works for me. Thank you.
Let's get started. So for in the IT gear specs document, I think we don't have to go through it entirely like you did last time. I made some notes of open topics perhaps we can cover. One of them was on this bit, the welded material list. Steve, I think it was you suggesting in the last call, perhaps we shouldn't look at the products, but at the components in this list as a structure. As far as I can see, we are still using the product structure with some subtopics in direction of components. Is this still open for discussion, or would you like to share another view on this, or is there anyone else who thinks we should structure this differently?
Yeah, I think the way we left it last time was we were just going to continue with the structure that you've got right now. There'll probably be a lot of repeated content.
Right.
And then, we can always restructure it later after we get all the content in there. It's just a matter of editing at that point. based on what comes out. So I think we're fine the way it's set up right now, at least to get things, continue to keep things rolling.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Then, one second. I think there was a topic on the heat sinks. Nigel, Jessica, Rolf, and I think Phil from 3M were planning to open a discussion offline, I think, on the heat sinks bit, mostly if we should use the focus on the methodology or on the reference designs for heat sinks. So far, I haven't seen Jack.
So we did share inputs into the heatsink design for consideration. We looked around the characteristics, some considerations for heatsinks, for example, keep out zones, how to also maintain socket layouts, and that's CPU dependent, and material types, and obviously the design to limitations, just to make sure you get the highest heat load dissipation. So these were all submitted through. Phil Toomer's also had some inputs to it, Jessica, and as well as Rolf. And I think what Rolf is going to be doing is taking those collective inputs and then just shaping it into an input into this document. And I think it's probably good to be done in the next by the next call.
Right. So so as I understood correctly, it's still focusing on some reference insights instead of, I think, the suggestion from Jessica to focus on the methodology, as there are so many options possible. Am I correct?
Correct. We have included some methodologies. We haven't laid out or detailed some specific specifications because it's related to the IT architecture that you're putting into a CPU brain type.
Right. Okay, so I think we'll see some additional information in this segment later on, as I understand.
It should be quite a nice chunky piece of work because it's a core heat source and it's a core method of dissipating the heat.
Right. I think there was a discussion last time on the acoustic waves and the impact on that bit. There was one of you aiming to give some input on the acoustic waves. I think Daniel, he's not in the call, I think, today, also had some ideas around this experiments, I believe.
No, that was Hussam. Hussam Alyssa from Microsoft had some research that he was going to share. And he was going to apply to that. So that's to do with the acoustic waves for high density storage nodes.
Right. Okay. I don't see any input yet, so I think we don't need to cover it right now. Hussam is not in the call as far as I can see. Right. In that case, I think that's most of the topics which were open for discussion. I see that Rolf added a little bit on the fan control simulator, basically, our basic design which we were using as agreed last time. So I think he added 2 drawings, as I can see, of the product design and some basic description to disable the bias, let's say, from the fan thermal control, right? See. So I think so far, if there are no other comments on this document or needs to discuss some elements in more depth, if there are, then we can do that right now. Let me know. All right. Then in that case, I suggest we move over to the immersion management interface document. Actually, only briefly discussed, I think, 2 calls before this one, where there's a basic outline of what should be covering the interface system, the management system, coming both from the facility side and the IT side. And I believe the Redfish integration should allow for the right integration on the IT side, already being used by in the OSP project. So I guess, Richard, you can enlighten us a little bit on Redfish, how this can be integrated and how it's being used right now with OSP.
Yeah, I think most of the commands that you will need are here. We just need to find out if you go down one more, or if you go up one page, the data collection part. Um, and part. So yeah, pump status. Um, I think that should be easily in. We can easily integrate that one. Um, Dielectric liquid properties. You'll need to help me define what are we, um, what kind of data we're, what kind of information we are giving out. I can send um, some examples on the power stuff. We just practically need descriptions on what we are reporting and how it would affect the overall system. Water circuit properties, that's fine. We're just replacing the ambient air with water properties here, so I think that should be okay. And then the alarm safety features, we'll need to add that as part of the commands, new commands that. Um, so all in all, I think these are going to it's pretty straightforward, I should say.
Right. I'm not sure everybody is aware of the function of Redfish actually and what it's covering right now. Is it an idea to briefly introduce that to the others as well?
Okay, I actually came unprepared, but I can do the presentation I did in the past regional summit. Um,
Yeah, if the other feels that would be a good idea. If everybody is aware of Redfish and the role it can play in this part of our substream, then I'm also fine.
I think it'd be a good idea for Richard to go through it real quickly, just for people that might not necessarily be as familiar with this.
Right.
yeah, it's a short slide. It's probably
Let's do it.
it's just about 15 or so minutes. If I
Excellent.
can,
I will let you present your screen, Richard. Yeah.
yes.
All right. Enable. I think we're waiting to see your screen.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this one because I'm
That's okay.
still trying to look for the file that I presented.
Maybe while Richard is looking for the slides, just briefly on what software outlined in this document on the data collection side with the pump status and the dielectric liquid properties and the water circuit properties. Is this sufficient? Should we add here other elements? Any thoughts on that? Okay. I take it that's the right structure. How are you doing, Richard?
I'm sorry. I'm really a bit of a mess right now with my files, but
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
are you
This is
sharing
what
anything? I don't see anything.
I'm not sharing it.
Okay, okay.
Switch to click and add switch to desktop. Um, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to share with share screen. Oh, share screen. Add.
When you're ready, you should be able to share your screen, Richard, just by.
Share. Hold on, this. To share.
Yeah, there we go.
Cool. Can Not sure what I'm looking at here. I don't have a stage, but what you should see is a screen titled Initial Framework. Can everyone see this?
We were seeing it, but it's not showing anymore.
Um, so you're still not seeing anything? Just a blank?
See the first slide probably of your. We only see your project call actually. I think you have shared the screen, but not your slides.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out which one is it. Okay. This one here.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it's on the wrong monitor. Okay. So I wasn't able to find the presentation I did in the summit, the past summit, but I think this one gives a pretty much view of what we're trying to do in Redfish, right? So Redfish is just basically a API where it's supposed to make the language easy for programmers. It's an open standard, um, and it's really all around the management of the components in a system. What we are focused on is just on the power shelf, right? Relating to thermal, cooling, and the power characteristics of the chassis. So what you're looking at here is the bigger bigger square is all the components in a power shelf that we're trying to manage. And this is rack and power related, not the system. There's an entirely different ecosystem for the system. So at the root would be the chassis, and then from the chassis you'd go down to the links to the managers, and then the different links. The links would represent either a PSU or a BBU, battery backup unit, right? Now, what will happen here is right after the chassis part, this is where we will be adding the commands for the water pump and monitoring of the fluid. So that's how it would look like. And these are the data that will flow. For example, on the PSU module, you'll have another root directory, and the chassis which would be the power supply, power supply itself. And then you will actually have some data and information around around the power supply, and that is also where you will have the reporting, um, reporting schemes. So it will give you the overall battery health or the power supply health, battery health, and all that. So all the input and output characteristics are monitored and reported. So it's pretty straightforward. Here's another view of that one, and this one is actually from the OCP baseline management document. Sorry, it's low. So here's the overall system view. This is how the hardware management looks like. So the portion where we are at would be around this area where we have the chassis, which in this case will be the rack itself, and then that will be broken down into two components for power and thermal, and that's where all of the things that we're doing or the things that we need to add would go into. So, any questions?
So, Richard, understand correct, the chassis, as you mentioned here, is actually the basin we're talking about in immersion substream. For the, let's say, the hardware cassettes itself in the basin, we would use the same management baseline as you outlined here.
Correct. I believe we just need to add um, the data that you would have. So that will still be under the chassis portion. Now the characteristics to that, it will be there will be interlinks to the managers and the protection schemes and all that. So there will be linkages between the chassis and the managers, but I believe all of it will just be in this area here.
Any thoughts on this by the others? Is this clear for everyone? Or should we have a slightly different focus or add something?
It looks good.
Are there any firmware engineers in this call? Or we're mostly hardware here.
I think mostly hardware. Yeah.
Mostly hardware.
Yeah. I am thinking at the you need to also consider something at the what do you call it, tab or row level, or the sort of rack level, sort of thermal management within that in the system that can feed back to management baseline as well, both for leak detection and temperature and power.
Right. So adding the element of safety here next to power and thermal, that's what you mean?
Yeah, but not just at the chassis level, but at the system level.
Right. Do you agree, Richard?
The management part really has direct access to the chassis portion. So I mean, like the if you think about it, if we're not using the if we are not using water cooling, right? The elements are pretty much the same, where you have, for example, in one of the calls we had, if the door is open on the rack, then the system needs to do something about it, right? Or if there's too much humidity in the rack, then again the system has to take an action. So all those, the humidity detection or the door open scheme, that's all under the chassis portion. We just need to let the service route and the system know that these are available for you to monitor and to act upon if there's a fault that has happened. So I think it's pretty much the same when we do, or we're just changing the medium of cooling and adding some more definitions on protections and safety and such.
Right. What kind of input would you need from this group actually?
It's pretty much we need to define what we need to add. So all the new things that I've seen in the document, I will need to reach out to someone and begin asking for definitions. I can give an example on how we are defining the elements in the mock-up that we're doing, and the format just needs to be followed. So it's pretty much straightforward and simple.
Okay, I think that would be good. I guess.
Do I send it to you, Rolf, and you'll link
yes,
me with someone who can help? Okay.
That's good. We'll send it to Rolf, then we'll make sure to share it. I guess, Nigel, you guys will be able to give some input on this. Is this far-fetched of how you're working right now in terms of a management system?
We're not working with Redfish directly at this moment, but it's just basically looking at this holistically and just making sure that all the sensors and alerts are aligned to the system requirements. But
right.
As I said, we would need to look at something at the system level, especially around safety.
Yeah, great. Anyone else in the call who would like to be involved directly with helping out Richard with giving the right input? Okay. I guess, Rob, you guys are working with Redfish already? Muted. All right.
Sorry, was that for me? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Rob. Yeah. I was wondering if you guys are working already with Redfish.
A couple of things that have happened. There was some facility schemas kind of initiated through the Green Grid for Redfish. So very basic stuff was created, and I think the power supply Redfish schema has been created. And I think Steve Mills would know more about that. So yeah, we're starting to to leverage this type of API.
Which
and we're not reinventing things.
No,
exactly.
Leveraging everything that is already there and just adding new stuff. I think.
Exactly. Yeah, it looks good. Yeah.
Okay, so Rob, would you be also willing, or do you think it would be of value of adding input for Richard in this case?
Yeah. You could put me. I'll do my best. I'm not super smart around this stuff, but I'll do what I can.
Great. Yeah, we only have a small group, so I'm trying to combine.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. You're so humble, Rob. You're so humble.
Right, and I guess the guys from Submer are willing also to give some input, and ourselves, of course. All right. That would be good. Any other questions on this topic? Steve, maybe would you like to highlight some elements regarding to Redfish or the interface system at the moment?
Sorry to interrupt, Richard. This is Nigel. I just think also on the other screen we were looking at, sort of inputs that were coming through, it would be also good to also include the unit of measure. So if it's power, is it watts? Is it kilowatts? Is it kilowatts per hour? If it's flow rate, is it liters or gallons? Is it per second, per minute, etc.? And also getting the difference between metric and US and European unit measures also defined, just to make sure we can cover that, because there could be some misinterpretation.
Correct. And that's the beauty when we begin defining the mock-up and the schema, we get to define all of those things however we
Excellent.
want.
Excellent.
Actually, would you be able to go back, Richard, on the previous slide you showed, which Nigel just mentioned?
All right. Yep, this one.
Yeah, actually, that's the one you mentioned, Nigel, right? That's what you meant over here, to add all the right metrics.
I think it was a different word. It was part of the OCP. It's part of the immersion cooling Google document I think we're looking at. But this will work, and you just be able to put in the various the references, the units of measure.
Right.
They've
Okay.
got
Sorry.
input current, energy, battery test results. Yeah, it seems to be starting to come together there.
Yeah.
That's for the PowerShell reference. So we'll just need to make sure it's for the chassis or for the system level references.
Right. When we begin defining the stuff here, as you caught that one right, where when we define total capacity for a battery backup unit, we need to include the unit of measure. In this case, it's AH. Then down here, input current, it's in amps, and the input energy is in kilowatt hour. So for when we do flow rate, we need to attach the unit of measure in the name, so it becomes obvious to everyone using the resource that we're using that unit.
All right.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing, Richard.
Thanks, Richard. Okay. In that case, Richard, I'll make myself presenter again. Then we can go back to the original document, if that's okay. Just making sure that perhaps we already can add a little bit bits here. This is what you meant, Nigel, to add here the right metrics based on the document Richard just shared, right?
Yep.
Just making quick notes. Great. Anything else you guys would like to look at now? I can see here we left the protocols open. I'm not sure how far Redfish is already actually looking into the protocols or the selections, etc. Should we cover this right now? Do you suggest, Richard? Richard, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here. Redfish follows HTTPS in the JSON format, so we need to stick with that one.
All right. So that one's straightforward.
Yep.
Great. So it seems that there's not too much to be discussed right here now so far until we receive from you the process to add the elements you need and build upon what you already have done, of course. Correct?
Was there any discussion about providing some information via like Modbus for the cooling facility cooling system?
Yeah, I'm not aware. Anyone else?
Yeah, I don't think we've talked about anything above. So we certainly talk about that now.
Yeah, I was just wondering. I know many facility folks on the cooling side use Modbus for that, and if there's any particular information that's going to be important for the facility cooling system to have, whether it's maybe flow rates or some temperatures, maybe that might be interesting to identify.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of information that would be interesting to them.
Yeah.
Do you know if there's a recommendation from the data center project on what those protocols should be?
You're trying to give me an action item, it sounds like.
Well, I think you're fairly familiar with that project, but
yeah.
We should follow whatever you guys are, whatever you guys are wanting, right? We should provide that, right?
Yeah. So good point. So let me go back and ask the facility folks and say, if there's a handful of particular pieces of information, we'll document it. So I'll take that as an action.
More importantly, even just the protocol or recommended protocols, right? We need to support these protocols. That's probably the most important. I bet we can probably, guess some of the other unique ones for this particular application.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Rob. That'll be very helpful.
Yeah. Yep.
And I suspect after I get that information from you, we should share that with not just Immersion, right? But that's going to be probably the same for the other ATS groups as well. So
right. Yeah. Exactly. Okay.
We should just tell them what the answer is, so we don't have to go look it up.
Yep.
Because Modbus is one of the protocols being supported in the other group as well.
Sounds like you're getting extra credits, Rob.
Yep.
I'm now regretting calling into this call.
Okay.
I just assumed you would have that memorized, Rob. That's all.
Yeah. I wish I did.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this document right now? We have 2 action items at the moment. Then.
To the point that was made earlier, we need to make sure that the units are defined. So I don't know if you want to add that into the document. That not necessarily for the alarming, but for the
in general, right?
Yeah. Whether we're going to use.
Right. Okay. All right. Let me see. Anything we need to add here right now in the data collection bit, or we just follow what Redfish is already doing and build upon there? Anything I need to highlight here at the moment? Is there more? Is this also in line with how you guys are working, Nigel?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. All right.
That's correct. That works for us.
All right. Great. Then I think we're good for this document. I think we still have a little bit of time left, so we can have a quick look at how far we've got on the best practice document, if everybody agrees. All right, let's do that. I noticed in the previous calls quite some time has been spent on a single or at the most 2 documents in a call. So I was hoping we can cover a little bit of each at the moment. I think the best practices so far hasn't been covered extensively. Am I correct, Steve? I missed 1 or 2 calls earlier. So.
I'm sorry. What was the question?
The best practices document we are looking at the moment, it hasn't been covered extensively so far, I assume. There's only a basic outline of content at the moment.
Yes, I mean, we didn't cover it in last week's call.
Yeah, right. So I guess we can just have a quick look at the outline at the moment to see if we need to expand this, if this is serving the goal of collecting those immersion best practices, or if we need to take another direction. I see it at the moment, it's very basic, looking just at the metrics being used. I think this is one of the topics we should discuss, which metrics we're using and which benchmarks, if I'm correct. So actually, I think that would be a good thing to do. I guess the different solution providers look different at this session that Submerge not on the call today. But I think this is one of the most important topics in this document to make sure that we use the same comparison metrics at the moment. Any of you have an idea specific or vision on how we should outline this? At the moment, there's density, of course, covered, but there we're already into the different metrics possible square feet or square meters, the tier levels, compatibility, weight, level of propriety, open for discussion. So this is just a very limited list. Any other suggestions for expanding this?
I'll have a think on this one and just go through the document and just add more. I can't think of anything right now off the cuff, but I'm happy to send an email to yourself and Ralph and contribute.
Excellent. Yeah. All right.
I think Rob also put his hand up as well to offer some input as well.
Yeah. Excellent. I think right now it's focusing actually on the solution, not so much on project best practices. Am I correct, Steve? I missed that point earlier on, but if I read the outline as it is right now, it's focusing on the solutions being offered, not so much on the best practices side of deployed projects or a more broader scope.
Yes, I believe that matches with my understanding as well for now.
Is that supporting the goal as it is doing in other OCP groups?
Well, so we've never done this kind of a document exactly in this group previously in Rack & Power. So we've had member companies, write a very specific white paper, explaining, maybe a very particular, method of doing something, or their, opinion about how they something should be done. This is a little different format. So I think this is probably a good format to go do this. I mean, what we're creating here is almost like it's really just a list of white papers that we want to go create, right? So I think this is fine for now, but I don't really have a way to compare that with the other projects. Just because the scope here is so much broader than what we, in my experience, have seen in some of the other projects.
Right. Do you think it's too broad in that case?
No, I mean, I think there's lots of opportunity here. I think a lot of these white papers have probably, I'm willing to bet some of this material's already been created or will get created through other sources, maybe not necessarily in this particular group. And then, this group can work to help publish that, right? We can help give them a forum to publish those. So I don't see any problem with it being broad. Or if we're looking at, say, this could turn into being like multiple papers as well, right? So each one being specific and potentially being more than one. So I don't think there's any problem with the breadth at all. It's just, I think that's just an artifact of the fact that this is a relatively new project with a lot of scope in front of it. So I think it's all good.
Okay. In that case, I can see also the difference between the topics are, as you mentioned, it's broad, right? So we go from deployment strategies to optimizing for heat reuse, which is highlighting a specific goal. Should we add anything else in terms of deployment strategies? Again, that could be really broad, right? In the types of deployment geographically or any other aims you could take. I suggest actually, maybe this is an next point for all of us, that we look into this document ourselves and see if we can to make a sub outline, I would say, of each topic. Would that be the right approach?
Yes, I think that's probably a good approach. And then, we can decide later on whether that's, is that just one big document, or is that, 4 different white papers that are released. We can always decide that later after the material starts to get filled in. Yeah. I guess something else that might be interesting is, where do we expect to get this information? Some of this is very specific, and you need to have, people that have, perhaps several years of experience, actually having some of this stuff deployed. Where do we go to get this type of information?
Yeah.
So that might be something to include, in the outline as well. These are good candidate companies maybe we can engage with, to answer these.
Right, and I guess one place to get the information from is actually beyond this group. As far as I can see, it's actually a small group working in this stream right now, but part of the information is probably with the end users and the other community members. How is this normally being organized, Steve, to get this type of information from them? We ask them proactively based on the structure we offer. Is that what they need?
Well, so normally these are not directed by the group. Normally these are developed by companies and in support. So it goes the other way. It's more organic. And then those get pushed through the group. In this case, we're trying to be proactive and encourage companies, or even it could be consortiums, right? It could be, your Liquid Cooling Alliance that you guys are already also part of, that may actually be better suited to develop some of this information. And then, maybe it's a joint release, or we release the information through OCP as well. So, for example, just one company could be Asperatus that generates the document that effectively covers the needs for both of those groups. That would be one way to do it. So I think to answer your question, yes, in this case we would be proactive, right, and try and go out and find the right people that could answer these questions for us, right? This is an opportunity. I have done this before. Identify essentially an opportunity and then ask members that might be willing to write a paper around that to help as part of their donation.
All right. Okay.
In this case, we'll just have a longer list of things that we would like to see.
Yeah, exactly. So in that case, we can do 2 things to basically offer a structure they can use to supply us with information, and but also I think the first step to look in this group working on it to see what kind of cases we can collect from our projects and users, basically, to have already a basic pile of information, I guess. Maybe actually we can use that to fine tune the structure we will be using for a broader group to ask input.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to go about doing that. Obviously, you've got much better contacts into the user base than I would.
All right. I think we should slowly start heading into a wrap up. I suggest this document, it would be good if everybody can have a look at it later on, see if we can expand, especially the sections 5 up to 8. Also to see if we need to expand beyond the last topic, heat reuse. I can assume there are many more. It might be on the efficiency or sustainability side of the topics, but it might be as well something very different. So I hope everybody can find some time to have a look at this and see if we can expand this. All right. Let me see. So far, I think earlier on the fluid interface document has been discussed. I think I would leave it for now. Just like the immersion regulatory document, I suggest, unless anybody has another suggestion, we would try to focus on each of those documents next time. So, and then in the last few calls, at least we have covered each document so far being outlined, and we have been starting working on each of them. I think that would be good. Any other suggestions for next call on what we should cover specifically?
So I have a question for Steve Mills. Steve, I'm just thinking, do we have a view of sort of a helicopter view of how you see this program coming together, sort of a roadmap of the documents and the timeline? So we obviously got a few broad documents now, they're starting to get populated. But just wanted to see how the shape and how that will lay out with timeline.
So from a timeline standpoint, and that's an excellent question to cover right now, we should be targeting at least a subset of these, right? The most important ones for review in the spring summit, right? The global summit. We don't necessarily need to be, the 1.0 version of it, right? But we should have something put together and ready for wide public dispersal and discussion for the global summit.
Okay, for March. That's March next year.
Yes. So in support of that, right, they're requesting that our proposals be in by November 20th, I believe, is the cutoff date. That's like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we probably need to, pick a couple of these and target those and make sure we get time at the summit assigned to review some of these specifications. I don't know how many slots we'll have, but we can put in, we can put in plenty of requests for proposals, and then, we can, basically I sit on the committee that's going to kind of decide what goes on based on how much time they allot me. So that might be something to discuss real quick, how many of these we want to shoot for, and can we get some proposals in, at least to reserve the time, in the next couple of weeks. All that's required in the next couple of weeks is literally just kind of a title and a person's name. This is a rough, what I would like to cover and the person. So.
Okay, I think that's an excellent suggestion, actually. This would be actually the moment to do that, at least to discuss indeed what we're going to submit and how many slots we need.
I'm just going to check the dates again real quick. I'm pretty sure it's 20th.
I think it might be the 30th, like the that week after Thanksgiving, at the very end of that week, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you may be right. I think you may be right.
Yeah.
I'll double check.
Yeah.
I think Rob's right.
I hope it is anyway. Anyways.
Yeah, that's really quick. So that would give us at least the opportunity to meet one more time before those are submitted.
Right. Indeed, I think that's correct. I think, but before the next call, I think maybe we can take this off the call, but through email or so to figure out what we would like to submit, and we can make a decision probably in the next call. Decision on what to do.
So why don't we try and get that done over email and through the mailing list, and then we can hopefully have agree in the next meeting, and then that'll help focus our energies on those that are essentially have a due date at that point.
Yeah, I agree. So that's basically our timeline. Is this sufficient for you right now, Nigel?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. Excellent. In that case, I think we can wrap up the call, unless there's another topic we still need to discuss.
Not for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael, for supporting this.
All right. Okay. Thank you, guys. I'll make sure that we can share the notes, etc., and follow on the action points we just discussed. And talk to you next time.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
thank you.
Bye.